Hi, this is Ohfor. Let's take a closer look at treasure tables. So, for those of you who've been following along in this series, back in episode 1, I said this. But that's actually not good enough. The game is expecting you to define here how many stacks of what size would you want to appear. And while the outcome of what I said here it's not entirely wrong, it works and I've been using it myself, it's actually not accurate. I've learned a lot about treasure tables since, and let's take a closer look at that. So, what we're looking at here is the treasure table from Gustav Dev. So it's one of the main treasure tables used in game. And there's a lot of stuff going on in here, as you might imagine. And so let's recap the story so far. What I covered in episode 1 was basically how do we achieve getting some loot into our bag, as it were. And also how to get stacks of loot into our bag. Now, setting 1,1 just like this will bring guaranteed one item of whatever is in the treasure table or the treasure entry. So I said that and it holds true. It just doesn't hold true for the reasons I thought it did back then. And if I wanted 20, so what do we have here? Object food pork piece B, so a piece of pork. And if I wanted 20 pork chops or whatever, I would still write 20,1, and that would be the end of it. But that's not exactly how the drop count column works, so drop count being this one. And I also mentioned frequency. I said, well, it's going to happen every time. So it's not entirely truthful. Although putting in a 1 will work as described, there is, however, a little bit more to it. So why don't we take a closer look at what we can do with that? So to better experiment, why don't we make a treasure table of our own? Actually, we have a treasure table in our tutorial mod, but we'll make one for test purposes here. And we are going to drop some sausages into it, because why not? So we open our own treasure table here. And then we're going to do a loot spawn treasure table. And we are going to start by doing exactly what we've been doing so far, and that I know many of you have been doing. So why don't we add a subtable to that? And then we go 1,1, and then we're going to go sausage C1, and what else? How high? Oh, and there's a sausage. Oh, there's a sausage and sausage C and D. So let's just add a little bit more. And then the regular sausage. Right, so now we have a loot spawn treasure table that will spawn 4 sausages. So let's start by showing you another trick I picked up over time. So we've saved this treasure table, and we go back in game, and we can see it's Laycell joining us, and Control Shift F11. Then there's a command called give treasure, and then we prefix that with the name of our treasure table. So we have here tut loot spawn, which is the one we'll be dealing with today. So we do give treasure and then the name of our treasure table. Boom. And what do we have here? 4 items received, just as predicted. We now have dried rope sausage, dried beef sausage, pork sausage, and another pork sausage. I don't know exactly why they're different, but we definitely have 4 different pieces of pork in our inventory. So far so good. treasure tables work as we expect, and everybody's happy. And if what you're doing is for your mod to drop some items into a treasure chest, the tutorial chest, or at a vendor or whatever, this is still fine. Don't worry about it. If this is what you've been doing, keep doing that. I'm going to show you, however, some details of how this actually works. So let's get back to our treasure table. Now, in hindsight, I'm actually going to change it up a little bit. So we are going to go with sausage B. Oh, that's what we have. And then an apple. The reason I do this is because it's going to make it a little bit easier for us to see what's going on in the next session. And then some rum, because why not? And let's see if we can find something. Some cheese. Why not? Okay. So now we have our refined treasure table that has sausage, fruit, rum, and cheese. Everything you need for a balanced, healthy diet. And let's just double check that that works. So we go in game and go up the console. I'll just do page up. And once again, 4 items received. So we're going to have a sausage, apple, rum, that they call fireswill, and cheese. Okay, so let's then look at the drop count column, because we can clear this out. Now what this means is that when you spawn, talking to the game obviously, when you spawn our treasure table here, you need to guarantee us 1 drop of either sausage, fruit, rum, or cheese. Okay, so it's basically going to say, okay, here's the drop count entry, and since there's no entry on these other entries, it's basically going to say it's going to be either this or this or this or this. Okay, so let's save that. And then go back in game. Hello, Lisa. So seems that, which is good actually, her inventory clears from this treasure table when we reset the treasure table, and that's actually nice because it makes our testing easier. So we are going to once again call up the console, page up. Item received, dried rope sausage. So she got a sausage, which is one of the options we had. Now let's spawn our treasure table again. She got the rum. Okay. We got it again. We do it again. She got the cheese. And once more. Then the apple. Notice how the game has now selected one of each entry. It's no coincidence right now that it keeps selecting new stuff from the treasure table. It keeps track of what it has selected in the past, and then it will sort of cycle through that. Now we've been through all 4. It will restart, so it will give us something random now. So now it gave us a fruit. That's because it has restarted the treasure table. If we do it again, we got the cheese, which means that we are now going to get the sausage or the rum. We got the sausage, which means we are now certain to get the rum for the last spawn. There we go. So that works in the way that it will sort of rotate between entries in the treasure table, and eventually in this setting end up giving one of each. If we go back to what that looks like in game, so let's find, so here's a supplies crate. No, that's a bad example because it is a little bit complicated, and we need to cover that. So you can see here, for instance, SCL supply. So this is the Shadow Cursed Lands treasure table, or one of them. And if you go loot random barrels and chests and whatever throughout the Shadow Cursed Lands, it will generate drops from this table. So it will give you one item that is either going to be rum, beer, wine bottle, etc., etc. So one item from all of these, and eventually it's going to give you one of all of them. So that's how you end up getting sort of varied loot inside these chests when you do get loot. And we see here supplies, fancy, so apparently a little bit higher tier chest, drop some slightly better items. And then quickly, as we walk through these treasure tables, we get into situations like this, and that's going to be next up, because what is going on here? So I said that this was a stack size and a drop count. That is not entirely true. As we can see here, there's lots of stuff going on, and what is actually that? Well, so what we can say here is that these are drop count entries. So a drop count entry is, like we see here, 1,1. That's one entry. And we can do more entries. We can say 2,1. So now we have 2 entries in our drop count table. And what this is basically doing is that it's adding up. So what you need to do is you need to add up the probability chances here. So this is 1, and this is 1. Added together, that means 2. So right now we have 2 entries, right? And they are both weighted with 1. So that means there's a 50-50 chance of selecting either one or the other. And when it has selected one, it's going to spawn either 1 or 2 items from this list of rum, cheese, fruit, and sausage. And I think it's probably going to be easier if I just show that in game. So what we expect now is that every other time, roughly, that we spawn this treasure table, we are going to get two items. And let's see how that works. Hello, Lisa. So let's spawn our treasure table again. So she got 1 item, the rum. Okay. Spawn again. 2 items received. So this time we got the, well, we're going to have to look. One of them was the cheese, I saw. Cheese and fruit. Okay. So we go back. This time we got a sausage. And this time we got 2 items. And it's going to keep cycling through that. So every other time you will get 2 items, and obviously every other time you're going to get 1 item. All right? And the reason for that being that they are weighted equally. Let's say that instead we want it to be every 4 times. So now the first entry is still 1,1. So there's 1 in 4 chance, and the reason 4 is because the combined probability, or the combined, I don't know what the right word is, but if you add 1 and 3, there's 4 possibilities on the roll that the game makes internally. And so it will drop, most of the time it will drop 2 items, and the rest of the time it will drop only 1 item. So we are more likely to get 2 items out of this than one item. Let's see if that plays out like we expect. So we go back in game. And the sales inventory has cleared out. That's good. And then we spawn our treasure table. So she got 2 items. This is what we expect. 2 items again. So now there should be a 50-50 chance of getting 2 items or just 1 item. We've got 2 items, which does mean that the last one should be 1 item. And it is. And now the game has progressed through all the drop count entries. It's going to go back to whatever random before. So we're getting 2 items. One item. All right. Then the last 2 drops from this table should be 2 items each. So 2 items here. And 2 items here. And now the table resets. So that's how that works. It's a little bit finicky, but if we look at an example here, so what we have here is BGO Supplies Fancy has a combined probability of 1 plus 3 plus 2, so that's 6. Right, and in 3 of 6 times, it will, no, hang on. In 1 of 6 times, it will drop 3 items. Okay. In 3 of 6 times, it will drop 2 items, and in 2 of 6 times, it will drop only 1 item. Okay. So it has a 50% chance of dropping 2 items from tea, supplies, food, 10. This is a nested treasure table. We'll cover that in a minute. So a 50% chance, so 3 out of 6, right, of dropping 2 items. And then if it doesn't do that, it might drop 1 item in 2 out of 6 times. And in the last instance, in 1 out of 6 times, it will drop 3 items from this treasure table. Okay, and we can keep going with that for as long as we want. And if it has spawned 3 items, it is going to cycle through the rest. So it's never going to drop 3 items again until it has made it through the entire cycle of the treasure table. Okay. Now let's look at nested treasure tables. As we see here, BGO Supplies Fancy includes a treasure table, and the way you include, so far we've been doing I underscore and then the stats of whatever it is you want to spawn. That's for an item or an instance. You can do T underscore to include another treasure table in your drop or in your treasure. So let's try and do that. So we're going to make tut spawner, and that's going to be 1,1 of T underscore tut loot spawn. Oh. Alright. So basically we have a treasure table now, tut spawner, which guarantees us 1 drop every time from this treasure table, T underscore tut loot spawn. And so in essence this is pointless because we could just spawn that, but I just want to show how that works. So if we select tut spawner, go back in game. Oh, I forgot to save, hang on. So the game reminds me, so it's going to save that before it lets me in. There we go. And come on, let's go. There we go. Our inventory should have been reset from all the nonsense we've been spawning her. And then we open up this one. And spawn, no, give treasure, and then toot spawner. So it chose to give us 2 items. So it's now running through the treasure table just as before. So nothing has really changed. Now we're just going a different way about it. And the reason the game has this option is because if we go back here and look, so it has already defined various tiers of food in little lists, and then it sort of collects these into a supplies crate for poor, where it has a certain selection, and then fancy, and a supplies crate, etc., etc. So that's essentially how we can go about it. This is an interesting one, by the way. Let's just look at this. So when you loot a BGO supplies crate, you are either going to get something from the BGO supplies poor, or you're going to get supplies spoiled, or you're going to get an empty treasure table. You're going to get nothing at all. There are other ways to do this, but that's how they've sort of gone about it here. So you can layer these treasure tables as much as you want, really. Okay. So there's just 2 more things that I wanted to cover. One of them being, if we look at the treasure table for Gustav Dev and go up to the very top, we will see that the spectator, for instance, drops the spectator eye amulet, and it has a drop count of -1. So what does that mean? Well, -1 is a guaranteed forced drop. And by forced, it basically means, let's say that instead of a specific item, like here, the spectator eye amulet, instead it would drop something from supplies poor. Now that would be a huge disappointment, but nevertheless. And the game had conditions in place where, there was various things that could drop. Perhaps they were level restricted. So I'm not going to cover that in this video, but start level, end level should be fairly self-explanatory. Is where we control what level the character must be to actually receive this entry in the loot table. So say there was that in place or other restrictions, -1 would force a drop regardless. And actually it would force 1 drop. I'm pretty sure you can set -2, and then you would get 2 drops. So why don't we try this out? So let's go back to our toot spawner treasure table. And then we're going to add a new substat. And we're going to say -1, and then select the cheese. So what this tells the game is that in all instances, there should most definitely be, when we spawn this one, there should most definitely be some cheese as well. Right? If we left it empty, let's actually just cover that. Then when we spawn the toot spawner treasure table, it would give us either a drop from loot spawn, or it would give us cheese. It would be a 50-50 chance, right? But by doing this, seeing -1, then it is most definitely going to give us some cheese, and then it's going to give us something here. At least if I got this right. Let's just test it out. So back in game, and just waiting for Lizelle to get ready. Right, she has an empty treasure table. Then we are going to spawn this. So it gave us 2 items. One of them should most definitely be cheese. So it gave us an apple and a cheese. And we spawn again. So this time we got 3 items, which means it picked 2 from our original treasure table and then a cheese. So now it's picked the rum and the sausage, and we got another cheese. So that's essentially how we can do a forced drop, I guess is the correct term. So -1 definitely give us, regardless of whatever else is going on, definitely give us 1 cheese. And we don't care about rules. We don't care about which drop count entries have played out. We want cheese. So that's how we do that. And then there's just one last thing that I wanted to cover, which is the frequency column. I'm just going to get rid of this cheese here again because it's not going to help us. Actually, let me also get rid of the tool spawner. We have covered nested treasure tables. Okay, so the frequency column, I've always set it to 1. And it works like a weighting. So because they're all weighted the same here, 1, 1, 1, 1, the game is internally going to roll a d4, I guess, something similar. It's going to generate a random number, and then it's going to pick something from this table once it has, determined that. So it's basically going to say, okay, fine, I have decided that it's going to be fruit apple, and then depending on where we are in the drop count, it's going to decide to spawn 1 or 2, right? Now, just like we could alter the weighting of the individual drop counts, we can also mess with the frequency. So if we put this to, let's say 7, and then leave the others at 1, that means the weighting is 10 in total, and in 7 of 10 cases it's going to pick an apple, and in the remaining cases it's going to pick either rum or cheese or sausage. Now the thing with random numbers is this is likely not going to go my way, but it should be very much more likely to drop an apple now as the first drop rather than a sausage, rum or cheese. Why don't we try it? And so we go back in game. All right, let's go. So we need to give treasure, and then we need the toot loot spawn. That was our original treasure table, and it gave us an apple. So now it has given us an apple. I think it's going to keep doing that, or be likely to do that, until it's given us a total of 7, maybe. I'm not entirely sure how it works this out. Yeah, so it's given us apples again. So we got apples and cheese this time. And another apple. And apples. Lots of apples. And what do you know? An apple. So as we can see, this treasure table is now very fond of apples, and that's of course the case because that's what we told it to do, until it has spawned. No, actually it doesn't care. So in 7 out of 10 cases, it's going to select the apple. So I lost count. But Lazel should basically have a lot of apples in her inventory now, yeah. So it's much more likely to spawn apples than it is to spawn anything else from this treasure table. Now, why you would want to do that, I don't know. That's entirely up to you. But that's how the frequency column worked, and I didn't really cover that all that well in the first video. So here we go. That's drop counts and frequency and nested treasure tables. And again, the where this makes sense is basically if you wanted to start distributing, I don't know, supplies or loot or whatever in the game, you would need to figure out how to add that to existing treasure tables. Now we already know if we wanted to add to this treasure table, we could just basically go copy that and then go here, create it in our game, and then append. So now we have the opportunity. So if we wanted rum, 2 bottles of rum to always appear whenever you loot. Don't do this, by the way. But every time you loot supplies in BGO, I forget which zone that is. That is probably Baldur's Gate itself. Anyway, then there would always be 2 bottles of rum in there. you would very quickly drown in rum, and that's probably overdoing it. So be careful, of course, and be mindful of what you do here. But that's essentially how you would go about it. You would find the treasure table you want to add to in game. Maybe that's probably worthy of a video on its own. And then we could add to it. And then we could also do, obviously using what we've learned, we can say 9, 1, 1. So if we do 0, 9 and 1, 1, then in 9 cases out of 10, it would not drop anything, or it would not add anything to the supplies poor treasure table. And in the last instance, in 1 case out of 10, it would add a rum. So now there would only appear a bottle of rum in every sort of 10th time you loot something from this treasure table, which is much more reasonable. And that's how you could basically work with loot distribution and the in-game treasure tables. I'm just going to delete that again, because if I leave this into tutorial mode, I'll probably forget about it, and then I'll wonder what's going on at some point. Now that's the treasure table walkthrough. If there's an appetite for it, I can cover it. The treasure table does have some things out here dealing with balancing, common loot, legendary loot, unique loot, but it doesn't really interest me all that much, because as we've seen on this channel, I generally make modded items legendary and whatever, but there is a case for distributing loot and making it more probable that rare loot drops than uncommon or epic, etc., etc. So if there's an appetite, just drop a comment below, and I'll revisit this as a later stage. But for now, at least I've clarified some of my misconceptions from my first video, and hopefully given a better overview of how treasure tables work. And that's it for this episode. Have fun modding!